want to make sure that you have your time to ask your question here on this roundtable. Very quickly, I'm going to go through because we're also going to be joining TV in progress in about 10 minutes or so. So just so you know who we have on our roundtable, of course, Dr. Sharon Contreras with Guilford County Schools. Right next to her, Angie Henry, the CFO of Guilford County Schools. Then David Sturtz, Cooperative Strategies, who did this master plan. Also, we have with us Carol Hilbert. She is the principal of Southern Guilford Elementary. Nicole Higgins is a parent. Jack Baker is also a parent and joining us, and then WFMY News 2's Jess Winters, who has been covering this master plan and who's going to be facilitating your questions from Facebook. Okay, so we're going to start this roundtable discussion here on Facebook. We're going to join it live during TV right at 5:30. So we just want you to know kind of what the lay of the land is. We've been having a really good conversation the last 20 minutes as we've been getting ready to go live with you. And I think first and foremost, people are going to be talking about this over Christmas break. Parents are going to be talking about it. And you wanted them to be able to ask their questions.
Absolutely.
This is one of those forums where you are able to ask anything and everything. Has there been a question so far that we have talked about just in the last 20 minutes that you particularly think people needed to hear?
Yeah, I think Nicole asked a really great question. I think all of the questions have been really good, but she asked about, you know, can we explain every school closure and every dime that will be spent? And I think that's a great question that lends itself to David explaining sort of the master plan and how we came to the recommendations.
Sure. And every dollar we can explain, and as you said, you know, can you explain it in terms of X, Y, and Z? And the response was yes, and it is X, Y, and Z. We never, looking at a facilities master plan, the reason we look at it comprehensively like this is that we don't want to make small decisions for one school without thinking about the big picture. So that's why we look at your district in terms of what's going on for all the elementaries, all the middles, and all the high schools by high school feeder area. Then what's going on geographically in terms of where kids are choosing programs and choosing different schools. So we zoom in, zoom out all the time. And we looked at the total condition costs, all the repair costs and deferred maintenance that the MGT facility study did and noted. And so when you see priority repairs, this school's going to get $8.7 million in priority repairs or 27, whatever it is. Those are the identified deficiencies in the MGT report that goes directly into those priority repairs. That is all the systems. That's carpets, that's roofs, that's HVAC, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Then when you talk about new construction, the rebuilding projects and the new construction, that's surveying 20 years of construction projects in the state, looking at what those costs have been by grade configuration. What are those costs? What have the annual inflation rates been? So what is a good, solid planning number for new construction today? And so that analysis went into the new construction costs. And then you look at, so what are the all-in costs that we're looking at for new construction, for repairs? And those are all tallied in the long-form report that we have here, released to the commission, publicly available, because with a plan like this, we want folks to be able to come in and see what's going on in my neighborhood. So the first page of every planning area, which is a high school network, organized by high school network, is what's the big data? What's going on with enrollment currently and projected? What's going on with my buildings? What are those condition needs relative to the cost of replacing those? What are the key drivers in condition and demographics here? In narrative summary, what's going on with area development? So what's the lay of the land? That's page one. What's the data? What's the context for the recommendations? And then you go to page 2 of each area, and then here are the recommendations, each dollar certain, you know, this is what it is, brief narrative, and then thirdly, kind of seeing more like geographically, how is that going to impact you? So we wanted to make it data-driven, we wanted to make it transparent, and yes, it's a lot, but as easy to digest as possible.
And David, I do want to add to that and give everyone some context, because not everyone here has been following this minute by minute all year.
Sure.
The MGT study that you mentioned that was published in January, it rated 50% of the schools, over 50% of the schools in poor or unsatisfactory condition.
Right.
So I don't want everyone pointing their fingers. Cooperative strategies, this outside consultant said this, because it is based on these facts.
It is.
Findings.
It is, and it makes perfect sense when you consider the discussion we were having right before a few minutes ago about the deferred maintenance issue. When you have most of your buildings built 50, 60 years ago, and because of various deferred decisions and deferred budgets with economic other considerations and what have you, the buildings have not had the kind of annual maintenance budget needed to keep them up. Those costs don't go away, and they just compound, and little issues become little bigger issues, become bigger issues, and then they compound over time, and that's where we are.
And then I know, Carol, you have seen that specifically in your school.
Absolutely. We have a building that opened in 1976, and over time, its function has declined. The heating and cooling never works properly. The way it was built, I think they literally just carved a road through the woods from the high school and flattened some land and plopped a building down. So we're one way in, one way out, which is a safety concern. And when it was built, we had doors to the outside in all the classrooms, which for me is a real safety issue. The accessibility is certainly present, and that is something we can relieve with a new building for Southern Guilford Elementary School, but it's less than perfect, and we do have systems that do not operate. We have dead zones where our fabulous new technology doesn't work because it drops. But even in the small schools and the large schools, there's some maintenance things that need to be taken care of. And in our case, we can't repair the heating and cooling system. You can no longer get the parts. It has to be totally replaced, which will be several $1 million to replace. So we're just band-aiding everything. We're doing great things, but we could be doing so much better.
Yeah, I just want to say too, not only are many of these schools in disrepair, but they're not 21st century learning facilities.
Right.
And if you've been in other states or visited places where they have new school construction, the students are being prepared for jobs of the future. They're getting great education so they can go to great colleges or to get great jobs, or both. They have maker spaces. They are STEAM schools, which means science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics. You have state-of-the-art art spaces. They are large spaces where students can gather. They remind you of workspaces where students are working cooperatively. In every space in the building, you no longer just have hallways where you pass through. These are spaces that you use so that students are working together, learning together. Even the exteriors of buildings are part of the interior, are coming in as part of the learning spaces. So the buildings we have, even some of the newer buildings, as I joined the district as its leader, I looked at them and I said, these are nice spaces. They're better than most of the buildings I see in the district, but they're not preparing students to attend the best universities, the best colleges, or to get great jobs. They're just not great spaces, learning spaces, or what we call in education, 21st century learning spaces. And I would also ask David, you shared something at the last meeting about the quality of schools built in different decades.
Yeah.
Could you talk to that?
Yeah, so you're talking about the school built in '76, and the joke is that the '70s were not so great for neither fashion nor architecture, right? I know my mother taught in the '70s pod. That's why I was almost not born. But the eras of the '50s, '60s, and '70s, these buildings were built post-baby boom, and they were built for speed. Because all of a sudden we had all of these kids coming up, and oh my gosh, we need schools.